time and I haven't got a microphone, so she would kind of tell me if you can't hear and also give me a bit of quiet so I can get through this, hopefully without crying.
I can hear you anywhere.
No heckling, thank you. So I'm like overwhelmed at how many people are here, and I've got a pile of books that I wrote over there on the table, and it's quite a lot to take in really, but here we are. I'll try and get through this. So apparently what authors do, and I am apparently now an author, is they talk about their writing stories. So I'm going to tell you my writing story, and then I'm going to tell you a bit of another story, which is probably a bit more interesting. So I had this thing in my head that I've always wanted to write a book, and it was something that I always told myself, and then I think I maybe told other people, and then I was thinking, is this true, or is this just me telling them that to make myself sound more interesting? And then I found a diary in the loft that I wrote when I was 17, and it said that I always wanted to write a book, and I wanted to be published. So I thought, okay, well, 30 years on, maybe it's time to get on with it. Anyway, so there was someone in this room who I said to in lockdown year, I think, I want to be a writer, I want to write a book. And he said, well, write something then. And I thought, well, that's a really good point, maybe that's where I should start. So I picked up a pen, I started writing, I wrote a few short stories, I entered some competitions, and I was really enjoying it, it was great. I signed up for loads of emails and newsletters and magazines and other means of procrastination. And I started to write, and I loved it. And then I started to write a novel, and I thought, oh, this is great, I am now writing. So my first thank you of the evening goes to Paul, who is my tennis coach, but who was very patiently listening to all the blah about my book and keeping me on track by saying, have you written anything this week? And how's your book going? And I'm thinking, oh, shut up about the bloody book. Anyway, thank you so much for the initial challenge and for keeping me on track with it. So, I'm writing a novel. It's very exciting. And then I get to about 20,000 words and I was totally stuck. And I thought, oh my God, now what do I do now? This is so much harder than I thought. I don't know where I go with this. I don't know why I thought I could write a novel. This is such a bad idea. So one of the emails I'd signed up for while I was procrastinating said, are you writing a novel? Are you stuck? I thought, oh my God, someone's reading my mind. So I looked and they were advertising a writing course, and I thought maybe that's what I need. So I applied for it, I got a place, and I was hugely grateful because that was such a good thing to do. It was a year's course. It was called the Ultimate Novel Writing Course, which seemed to be the right course for me. And it sort of guided you through all the different steps of writing a novel. So on the course, I was in a group of 10, and every week we had to post something from our novel and we had to comment on each other's stuff. And so the first week, like literally everyone else posted on day one. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to post something for the people to read. This is horrible, what am I doing? And everyone else had written a book before, or they're on their second draft, and I had massive imposter syndrome. Until about week 6, when I got this comment on my work. It said, you've made me care about a book that, given the genre, I didn't think I'd care about at all. So that was from Alan, who's here today. And thank you, Alan. He did make lots more comments than when I said that one. But so I thought, well, I'm obviously doing something right if I've converted Alan to reading young adult, because he was writing literary fiction and everyone was writing crime thrillers, and I was thinking, I'm not in the right group here. But actually, it was a brilliant group to be in. We had a great time. We learned a lot from each other, and 4 out of what ended up being 9 of us have been published or published themselves, so pretty high success rate. So the course was great. So I was writing, but I needed ideas, and I had an idea and I'd got stuck with it, and then I was kind of moving on. But I just thought, I'm writing about a teenage girl, and it's not that long ago, but I am relying on, some memories of when I was a teenage girl. But let's face it, I'm not a teenage girl anymore. So fortunately, I was surrounded by teenagers because I had my wonderful stepchildren and my kids, who were probably unwittingly providing me with lots of inspiration for my book. So thank you guys, to Carla and Annie Rose and Ben and Louisa and Tony, who aren't here, for providing me with ideas that you probably didn't know that you were providing with, and also for reading. Annie Rose read it in its first draft, Carla's read it really recently, Ben's going to read it soon. I told him I wasn't going to say that. That's one of the first people that inspired me, because when I was saying I'm going to write a novel, and he said, oh, that's great, Mum, I can really imagine it in Waterstone's window, so, you know, still working on it. I might have to break in. Okay, so, and thanks also, guys, for today, because you've been amazing. So, I've written, so the course takes you through writing, editing, and then on to being published. So, you know, I naively assumed that that wouldn't be that difficult. You know, I've written this amazing book that everyone is saying is amazing, even Alan. And you realised you were going to get picked on. So you start sending it to agents, and you send your opening chapters and a letter, and you tell them what the book's about. And I got rejection after rejection after rejection. And however you feel and however confident you are in your writing and your book, that is horrible. It's really soul destroying, and you're kind of warned about it, but it doesn't help. So I got a bit dejected about it all, I think. But at that point, some people were reading my manuscript and giving me really encouraging comments. And I'm not going to name everyone, but there's someone here, I can't see her, Fee. Fee makes me cry. Why Fee makes me cry? Fee said some lovely, heartwarming things about my book, and I thought, okay, keep going. This is worth doing. So after a bit, an agent asked for the full manuscript. She had it for a few months, and then eventually she sent me some comments, and she said, I don't think it's right for me. I don't want to represent you, but I've got some feedback. And she sent me really good feedback, but quite extensive feedback, and I kind of thought, oh, I can't do this anymore. And then a couple of weeks later I thought, actually, I agree with her. I think she's right. So I did a major edit, and then I left it, and I couldn't keep sending it off to people. I couldn't keep getting rejected, so I just left it for ages, like a year, more than a year. Other people got published, and nothing happened. So I was busy, I was doing other stuff, and then someone I've already mentioned, who thinks he's always right, said, what's happened to your book? I was like, he said, I don't know why you don't publish it yourself. So part of the course had been a module on self-publishing, and I'd kind of ignored it because I thought, I don't really want to do that, can't be bothered. So I revisited it, and I thought about it, and I thought, actually, it's a good idea. I can probably do this. Let's get it out there. What's the point of having my book on my laptop? It should be out in the world, and here it is. So you'll be happy to hear that's the end of the story, or maybe the start of a new chapter. So I'm going to read from Amy's story, but first of all, there's one person left to thank. And he thought I'd forgotten him. Vaughan, thank you. I'm going to cry. I'm going to cry. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything. Thank you for all the support, and for the backing and the encouragement and everything you've done to get me where we are today, and for buying all the wine and beer. Indulge me just about 5.5 minutes longer, because I had advice that it needed to be no longer than 5 minutes, but you could go up to 7 if you were stuck. I'm going to read a chapter from the book. This is the bit we would call the inciting incident. It's chapter 7, and it is the party. I'd like to say I remember every detail about that night, but I don't. Bits of it, yes. The bits I'd rather forget. They're stuck in my brain, triggered at any given moment by the smell of sweet bakes, the taste of warm Coke, certain songs. I've relived those bits too many times, I was hit with a wall of sound and heat as I opened the front door onto a crowded hallway. The crowd continued through the whole ground floor. Seemed like everyone in my year and everyone we'd ever spoken to from the year below had turned up. There were a few older boys I didn't know. I guessed Ollie's brother and a few of his mates. It was carnage, and not really that late. Mum probably dropped me off around 9:30, but the levels of drunkenness were way above the slight G&T buzz I was feeling, a sign of a good party. I was on the lookout for Harry from the minute I walked in, but first I needed to locate Maria and Rosie and the communal vodka. I pushed through the hallway into the dining room, navigating a crowd of people flirting, snogging, slamming shots and yelling into each other's ears in an effort to have a conversation. Maria was on a makeshift dance floor that looked as if it was usually the site of a dining table. She gave me a wobbly hug and shoved a bottle at me. "Where's Rosie?" I managed to yell into her ear between gulps. She shrugged and mouthed, "Ollie? Already? So much for waiting for me." Fuck 'em, let's dance. I forgot to say, my mum's review of the book was there's a lot of swearing and it's quite disturbing. So I shrugged and we carried on swigging from the bottle, flailing around and in my case scanning the sea of bodies for Harry. Sometime into our random gyrations the music shifted. Happy pop and dance tracks were replaced with something altogether darker and more grungy. We tried to keep going for a couple of songs, then Maria reached to me. This is shit and I'm so hot, should we go outside for a bit? I nodded, grabbing her bag from the edge of the sticky dance floor and following it to the back door. In the kitchen there were glasses and bottles and half-drunk, murky-looking alcoholic concoctions on every surface. Maria went to pick up a cup of something that might have been punch but definitely should have been avoided. I steered her away from it and out through the door. Taking a clean mug from a shiny grey cupboard, I filled it with water and followed her out into the back garden. I don't know why breathing in fresh air makes you feel even more drunk. We both reeled as it hit us and slumped down onto the nearest bench. I took a sip of the water and put the mug down on the grass. Even more people were hanging out in the garden. I didn't recognise a lot of them, although they all seemed pretty friendly. Hoping to nick a cigarette, Maria struck up a conversation with a bunch of smokers we'd never talked to before in our lives. We chatted away with them. I remember their listening faces slightly glazed over as I talked with them animatedly about God only knows what. Someone was passing round a joint. I said no thanks and passed it on, but whenever I smell weed it always takes me back there. From somewhere upstairs I heard sounds of laughter, then a window being suddenly closed. In the smoky vodka blur it seems weird that I remember the window. Girls! It was Rosie, in need of vodka. She pulled us into a hug and I passed her the Coke bottle. She seemed much more sober than I felt and swigged it greedily. Where's Harry? She voiced the question that had been in my head all night. Thought he'd be with you. I shrugged. Haven't seen him. I haven't seen Ollie either or any of them. She took another slug of vodka Coke, screwed the lid back on and pulled me off the bench. No, me either. Come on, let's go find him. I let her drag me away, leaving Maria chatting with her new smoker friends. Harry was surprisingly easy to find for someone who'd been invisible for the past 2 hours. Standing at the bottom of the stairs with Ollie, beer in hand, chatting, laughing, looking like a nice boy having a good time at a mate's party. It didn't occur to me at the time to wonder where they'd been or what they'd been doing. As Rosie and I squeezed through a group of rugby lads, he spotted us and made us some space. Hey, where have you been hiding? He looked cool in a nice t-shirt and jeans and smelt of shampoo and body spray. For a second I pictured him in his room at home, getting ready, choosing what to wear, just as I'd done. Not hiding, just dancing, I replied, smiling. He leant in closer. What? Dancing, I yelled, laughing. The 4 of us stood awkwardly. The group conversation was pointless. The music had got louder as people got more drunk and none of us could hear a thing. Gradually Harry turned his back to the others, so that there were just the 2 of us. Rosie and Ollie melted away. Well, I say that. For me, they did. In fact, I think they probably stood there at the bottom of the stairs for quite a while. But all I could see was Harry from then on, like we were the only focused part of a very blurry picture, standing so close together, oblivious to the music, the banisters pressing into my back, the sticky patch on the hall floor where someone had dropped a beer. And then, it was that moment. We've all seen it in a million films. The 2 main characters have found each other. The ones you've known all along were destined to get together. Everything slows right down. They look at each other with a new intensity and some weird current of energy passes between them. Then they kiss, which sounds cringy and romantic, but it happens. Well, it happened to me, once. His hands cut my face and he pulled me into him, and all the waiting and wondering and hoping were worth it. The rush of something that felt like pure excitement overwhelmed me. Nothing had ever felt that real before. My whole body was just nerve endings reacting to him. Maybe Rosie and Ollie were still there, watching as the inevitable happened. Maybe they saw that it was me who sometime into the eternity of that first kiss grabbed his hand. Maybe they saw that it was me taking the lead, me who smiled as I guided him up the stairs. Sometimes, when I think back to that night, I need to remind myself that a lot of it was my idea. I forgot my joke about Vaughan. I'm going to have to tell it now because Jean's here as well. So a couple of weeks ago when the books arrived, I was very excited obviously, and Vaughan's mum came round for dinner and I said, no, I've got my book. And she went, oh, it's so exciting to have an author in the family. And Vaughan said, Mum? He said, I meant a real author.
Thanks, Mum.
done. Thank you all for coming.